Hi, welcome back to the Installation Art Podcast. I am trying something a little bit new and different today. I don't have a guest, it's just me. I thought I'd come here and talk to you, just one-on-one, and see how that goes. It's actually really scary to be doing an episode alone without a guest because I don't know. I would have thought that talking to strangers would be stressful and scary, and actually, I find it quite chill. Like, it's a lot less scary than just talking alone in the studio into the microphone. But I thought, I'll try this. This is like a special bonus because I'm celebrating. It's a special occasion. It's the 1-year anniversary of the Installation Art Podcast. I can't believe it's been, I don't even know, is it only 1 year or already 1 year? I'm not sure. It feels like I've been doing this for so long, and also, has it really been already a year? Anyway, as a little treat, I thought I should re-release the interview with Alex Chinneck, which I released originally as 2 parts because it was quite a long conversation. And now I'm releasing it as just one whole uninterrupted episode because it was such a great conversation and worth revisiting, or definitely worth listening if you haven't listened to it yet. I am still thinking about it even now. So yeah, it was very great. One disclaimer about the episode with Alex Chinneck. I had technical issues with his sound and it's not the best quality, unfortunately. There's nothing I can do about it. So it's best listened at 1x speed. If you're one of those people who has to listen to a podcast on 2x or something like that, I can't help you. But yeah, take your time. It's not like a slow-paced episode, so it's fine to listen to it on 1x speed. So that's the disclaimer. But yeah, I thought that I could do a bonus episode, like a recap of what really stuck with me from that interview and share some personal reflections and takeaways. So let's talk about it. First, he mentioned that biscuit tea was his favorite beverage in the studio. I did actually find biscuit tea in the shops here in Sydney, so I bought it and tried it. And now every time I drink biscuit tea, I think of Alex, which is great. Alex has such an impressive presence about him. He's got this personable, charming energy, this self-deprecating humor that kind of makes you want to be his friend. And, he's so easy to talk to. And I think it really comes through in the interview as well, because whenever I re-listen to it, I still find it very engaging and interesting. This is something I think of a special skill of his that I'll come back to in a bit. Alex talked about not being a creative kid at all. He actually discovered painting as a teenager and then got into sculpture almost by accident because he went to art school and the art school had great facilities for sculpture and fabrication. So that's how he kind of fell into that. But he is more of a person who likes to learn by doing rather than art school learning, He was quite happy to leave school after his bachelor's, after 3 years, and just get to work. He said he learned more by working for this British sculptor, Conrad Shawcross, in 3 months than he did in 3 years of art school. Alex said that that's where he learned ambition. Obviously, Shawcross is quite an ambitious artist. He works with large-scale sculptures. He's done public art projects. Alex got to travel with him for his work. He probably learned quite a bit about the behind-the-scenes process of managing a large-scale studio practice. He also got a free studio space in an old warehouse where he basically talked the owner of the warehouse into giving him and his mate the disgusting unused bathrooms in the warehouse that they turned into their studio spaces. And he was able to use that as his workspace for 3 years with no rent, which, this is something, this seems like an ideal scenario for an artist fresh out of school, just starting out, trying to find their voice in a big city. And honestly, I don't know where you are, but in Sydney, and I imagine London, New York, places like that, this kind of thing just doesn't seem possible anymore. I mean, maybe if we continue listening to what Alex is saying, maybe it is possible. I don't know. But for example, here in Sydney, the smallest cubicle of a studio with no fabrication facilities, barely a kitchenette, usually best suited for people who work at a desk, digital work, small scale, 2D work, clean work. That's starting from 250 Australian dollars per week in Sydney. I don't know what it's like in other places, but I do know that for a lot of artists, this is not an affordable rate to have a full-time studio. For me, visiting inside Alex Chinneck's mind during that conversation is like going to some kind of an art Disneyland, like a wonderland of possibility. So that's what I mean by maybe it is possible. Because here is somebody who just has such ambition and trust in his ability to pull things off. Rightly so, because early on he had that experience that he could pull things off. And I just can't help but marvel at the level of complexity of his work, the amount of collaboration and budget and production that goes into it. And for me, looking from the outside, it seems like his entire practice is basically built on his ability to facilitate or beg, steal, or borrow, as he would call it. For example, his first couple of architectural scale projects were all done with no budget whatsoever. In his early days, when he was just playing around with building materials, trying to make sculptures and installations, he would use bricks. And he went to brick makers, brick companies, and asked them for bricks. So they would donate bricks to him. But not just bricks, but also the technical skills, exchange advice, their techniques or knowledge on how to cut things, how to do certain things. Same with glass. The first big public art project that he made, he basically talked these very practically minded construction companies into collaborating with him on his art project that had no foreseeable output or result apart from maybe some photos that he could give them and they could potentially use for marketing. For me, that is just absolutely mind-bending to even think of doing that, let alone actually go out and do it and relentlessly go to people and ask the way he did, going from company to company, from person to person until he gets a yes, that's wow. That for me is a mindset that, it's even difficult to tap into that kind of way of thinking, actually. I have to admit, I don't know if I should talk about this really, but I've thought of doing something similar and wanting to learn from people who are in no way related to visual art, but who have maybe skills or tools that I might benefit from. But honestly, I'm too scared to even try. I don't even know where to start. I wouldn't know who to ask, wouldn't know how to ask them. And so I end up talking myself out of it before I even try. Because in my mind, it's like, there's no way. Like, what's in it for them? Why would they be interested in my art project? Why would they be interested in helping me for free? Everyone wants something nowadays, And I think the way Alex got these hundreds of pieces of glass that were all identically cracked, he got the glass and he got the technique to do that. He replaced all the glass in the whole warehouse building. He talked the owner of the building into letting him do that. I don't know how he did that. It's so hard for me to fathom how you would go about doing that. He has a real knack for it, because then what did he do? He sketched this idea of the facade of a building sliding down. And then he went, oh, well, now all I need is a building to make that. I just need to find a building. I mean, who even thinks like that, That's some next level kind of way of thinking that I wish I could tap into and siphon off some of that. I don't know, what is it? Audacity, magical thinking, naivete? I have no idea, but I want a bit of it. Just a little bit, just a taste, to get some idea of what's possible or what could be possible. The art of Alex Chinneck, for me, is that kind of thinking that, sure, I can pull that off. I just have to work hard enough to do it. I just have to find a building to do it. And according to him, for that project, which was huge, it's probably one of the first images that comes up if you Google Alex Chinneck, the sliding facade. According to him, he got the bricks and the timber for free. He got a team of builders through a local contractor for free. And he also talked someone into volunteering to be the structural engineer for the project. He didn't even know initially that he needed a structural engineer for the project, but it turns out, and he found somebody who would contribute their time toward this art project. And this person actually still works with Alex to this day, which is quite amazing. Not only that, but he also befriended someone locally who was helping him find the building through the council to make this project on, who accommodated him for 3 months at her house while he was working on this project. And they became such friends that she is now his studio manager. So the guy is obviously easy to talk to. I noticed that straight away. He's obviously charming and lovely, and he's obviously really good at talking people into doing some crazy stuff. He's great at getting people to be excited about his mad ideas and going along with them. I think that is the true art of Alex Chinneck. That is my theory. And he did say, facilitation over fabrication. He said that it's really important to find partners in people who are open to the crazy ideas and who don't let logic get in the way of a mad hatter project. And you know what? I think it's so encouraging, surprising, positive that he manages to find so many people in those industries, the practical, mathematical, realistic, commercial minded fields who are willing to work for free on these art projects just for the joy of it. Obviously, now that he is more established and he has this big portfolio, he obviously pays people. But in the beginnings, there was no way for him to have realized a project on the scale of actual building with no money any other way. And I just admire so much that skill to pull it off, get things done, get people on board. I think it's absolutely amazing. Chinneck himself said that the challenge, even for him, is remaining naive and foolishly ambitious amongst ever accumulating experience. That's hard, right? If your experience is turned on all the time and you know what it takes to make something at that scale, you'll never do anything because you're too aware of the obstacles, of the costs, of the potential problems, of the time and the investment. That is so true. So I guess maybe we all need to cultivate some foolish ambition and to practice the skill of turning it on and off, turning off our previous experience. Because if you think about what it takes, like he made a whole house out of wax. He needed 10 tons of wax to make the bricks to build that house. He had to go to every wax company in the UK to ask for the wax. And he said he initially asked for 10 tons and everybody said no. Then he went back to all of them and asked for 1 ton each, and they all said yes. So, it's not just the experience of how doable is a work. It's also the experience of getting no, no, no as the response to your questions, to your attempts. Being faced with rejection is hard. It's disheartening. We all know what it's like. We can be prepared for it, but it still sucks and it makes you slow down. At least for me, I'm aware of it. I've been there. I've experienced it so many times. But when it's something that's really important and you still get the no, it's just discouraging. And so I guess one of the things that we can take away from this interview with Alex is we should practice turning off the previous experience, the previous knowledge, and go into new things with this ambitious naivete and magical thinking, believing that anything is possible, despite all evidence to the contrary. Because, how else would you make the facade of a building slide off if you didn't think that way? On the other hand, I would say that having no experience also doesn't help. That's a personal observation. Not knowing how to do something or where to even start to learn to do it or seek help, not knowing whether it's even possible. I find that that's an obstacle I'm faced with on a fairly regular basis. And that's also hard. You don't know what you don't know. And even knowing what you don't know, but not knowing how to not know anymore, as in, where do I turn to learn? Where do I find out? Who do I ask? How do I approach the person to ask? As an introvert, especially, yeah, that's hard. So Alex's work has really stuck with me. and his way of creating work and his philosophy about facilitation, that without facilitation, it's very hard to make something ambitious materially exist. I am still wondering, how can I apply that to my own practice? Because for me, I think that's my Achilles heel, that I want to be self-sufficient for some reason, probably something to do with my childhood, but let's not go there. I want to be independent. I want to be self-sufficient. And if I can't do something myself, then I can't do it. I don't know if you can relate to that or not. And I don't mean to turn this into a therapy session, but damn, what a limiting belief that is, right? How to get past that, I don't know. But if you have any bright ideas, let me know, because that's something that I've definitely struggled with in my own practice, or even, just my life in general. Another interesting observation that Alex Chinneck makes in the interview is about feeling like a tourist in the art world. That his work, despite his success and his popularity on social media and wherever, or perhaps because of it, who knows, that he has never garnered much interest from commercial galleries. He says he's not sure why that is. He thought maybe that's his words because his work is on the verge of being a stunt versus being art. I don't know that that's what it is. I don't know. Maybe because it's too whimsical, too popular, too accessible. Maybe it's just because there's some kind of an invisible divide between the world of public art that exists in the public sphere versus commercial, collectible fine art, or versus institutional fine art that you see in museums. But that is actually a very interesting question that I've wondered about myself, and I'm not sure what the answer is, but I've observed this now in multiple cases where artists who are self-made, as in they've created their own opportunities, they're successful at what they do, they sell their own work, they make their money, good money on their own. They're well known by the public, they're loved by the press, they're popular on social media, but it appears that they are shunned by the traditional art world like galleries and museums. I don't know if that's the correct word. I don't know if they're actually shunned, but there's just no relationship there and there's no crossover. Maybe it's because the art world just isn't interested in artists who forge their own way to success, who basically don't need them, who don't need galleries or institutions to show their work and to make money. Maybe they're potentially more successful by being independent, both financially and commercially. But I don't know. It seems to be a thing. It's an interesting phenomenon. And like I said, I've noticed it in several cases, and I've wondered about what that's all about. But what really struck me, again, is when Alex said that he didn't have the patience for the traditional route. Your MA and then gallery representation and then museum shows and then an invitation to create a public artwork. He said he had the ideas and he had the energy and the stamina to realize those ideas. And he didn't want to sit around basically waiting for someone's invitations or permission to make it happen. That's something that I think we can all learn from a little bit. Something we should maybe just remember. I don't know what that looks like necessarily, but public art is about the hardest form of art you can make. So if Alex Chinneck can pull that off without waiting for invitations or permissions and just self-facilitating the projects, then everyone can do something for themselves. We don't have to wait for an invitation, right? Something to think about. There's another very interesting point that he made in the interview about public art. First of all, he says artists who paint in their studios, they start by painting 100 bad paintings that no one ever has to see, no one ever has to know about. And after that 100 paintings, they start to make good work. They start to make better stuff. But with public art practitioners, there isn't such a luxury. You can't practice making public art per se. You either do it or you don't. So Alex reckons because it's such a niche field, because it's so complex and high budget, and there's such a long preparation and lead time and all these players and elements, there must be a lot of bad public art out there because public art practitioners didn't have the luxury to practice before producing the first public artwork. And I think we've probably all witnessed the results of that dilemma. So Chinneck makes a really interesting point that I haven't actually stopped thinking about since that conversation. And that is that public art should not be necessarily permanent. That everyone involved in the project, the artist, the commissioner, developer, architect, city council, even the public, should be open to the idea that in 10, 20 years, whatever period, that particular work might stop working in the context where it is installed, and it might need to be removed, and it might be for the better for everyone. So he says that for his public art projects, he now has a point in his contracts, leaving him the freedom to review the work's viability in 10 years' time, or every 10 years. As somebody who doesn't know anything about public art, this kind of rings true, It sounds like something quite reasonable and potentially necessary. Considering that installations in institutions are almost never permanent, maybe we shouldn't be so precious about public art. But then, if the work's gotta go, what do you do with it then? So there's a lot of questions that I don't have the answers to, but I just think that was an important point and an interesting topic of discussion. What do you think? Also, a reminder that Alex said that all sculptors and installation artists should definitely watch the documentary about Anselm Kiefer. And shamefacedly, I must admit that I still haven't watched it. Have you watched it? If you haven't watched it either, and you're listening to this, let's make a deal. Let's go watch this documentary about Anselm Kiefer that Alex Chinneck went to the cinema 4 times to see and was absolutely enthralled by, fascinated by. Let's all watch it, and maybe next bonus episode will be about that documentary and we can talk about it. Okay? Maybe let's do that. Homework. I will put the link in the show notes so that you can easily find it and watch it with me. I hope you enjoyed this reflection on my conversation with Alex Chinneck. If you haven't already, I really encourage you to revisit the full episode now that we've released it as a single part. I would also love to hear your thoughts, whether about the interview, another episode, or what I've said here today. I'd love to hear from you. I've actually set up a special little voice memo option, a little link where you can send me a quick 90-second voice message You don't even have to leave your name or contact. It can be completely anonymous if you want. I've put a link in the show notes. Head over to our special voice message page and send me a message. I might even feature it in a future episode. And if you don't like leaving voice messages, you can always email and write your thoughts as well. That's also very welcome. The email address is anastasia@installationartpodcast.com. I don't know if this bonus episode will come to anything. I am thinking of doing more of these. So this is another thing you can leave me feedback on. Tell me if this is something interesting to you, if this is providing value, giving food for thought, or if you would just prefer hearing from our guests and hearing the interviews. So yeah, I'd love to get some feedback, some input and thoughts. I don't just do the podcast for myself. I also do it for you. So I want to hear what you have to say. Well, thank you for tuning in to this unusual bonus episode. Maybe one and only, maybe the first of many, I don't know. Don't forget to follow us on social media for more installation art podcast content. We are on TikTok and on Instagram at Installation Art Podcast. Don't forget that we're also on YouTube, where you can watch the episodes, see the artists' expressions, see their backgrounds, and even see images of their work as they talk about it. We are on YouTube at Installation Art Podcast. And the link to leave a voicemail is speakpipe.com/Installation Art Podcast. I will put that, as well as all the other links mentioned with the Anselm Kiefer documentary, in the show notes, and it will also be on our website under this bonus episode post on installationartpodcast.com. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time.